There is a moment in many empathic people when the caring does not fade gradually. It stops. It is the moment you notice you are no longer reaching for someone emotionally, even though they are still pulling on you the same way they always have. You still understand them. You still read the room. You still sense the tension, the insecurity, the manipulation, and the sadness. But you do not volunteer your nervous system as the solution anymore. And when that shift happens, people around you often panic because they were not in a relationship with you as a whole person. They were in a relationship with your availability. If you are watching this and you feel numb, distant, or strangely calm after years of giving, you might be thinking something is wrong with you. You might wonder if you became cold. But what if this is not cruelty? What if this is your psyche finally protecting what you refuse to protect? Carl Jung talked about individuation, the process of becoming a whole person instead of living as a role. A lot of empaths do not realize they have been living as a role for most of their life. The role is the fixer, the peacekeeper, the emotional translator, the one who makes it make sense, the one who softens everything so everyone else can keep going. Many empaths were trained into empathy through survival, not because they were born magical, but because being sensitive kept them safe. If you grew up around unpredictable moods, conflict, emotional immaturity, addiction, or silent tension, you learn to scan, you learn to anticipate, you learn to absorb the emotional weather before it hit you. You learn to read a sigh, a pause, or a shift in tone, because reading it early meant you could manage it. That is not just empathy, that is hypervigilance. When you live like that for years, you confuse anxious monitoring with love. You confuse self-abandonment with kindness. You confuse tolerance with maturity. You become the person who says, "I understand," even when what is happening is not understandable. You become the person who says that it's okay, even when it is not okay. And you become the person who stays, even when staying is a slow form of self-betrayal. The empath who finally stops caring usually hits a breaking point that is not about a small argument. It is about a pattern becoming undeniable. It is the moment you realize the relationship is not built on mutual respect. It is built on you doing emotional labor that nobody even notices until it disappears. You are the one who kept conversations calm. You are the one who over-explained to everyone. You are the one who softened hard truths. You are the one who apologized first to end discomfort. You are the one who carried guilt that was never yours. Then one day you see it clearly. The same people who call you kind have been using your kindness as a tool. Sometimes the breaking point is betrayal, like an affair, a lie, or public humiliation. Sometimes it is something quieter, like realizing that the person who drains you never asks how you are, unless it is a doorway back into their story. Or realizing that when you set a boundary, they do not get curious, they get angry. Or realizing that your peace only exists when you are performing. At that stage, something changes in the mind. Psychologically, it can look like emotional detachment, but it is often emotional regulation returning. If you have been fused with other people for years, boundaries feel like coldness at first. If you have been trained to prioritize harmony over truth, honesty feels harsh at first. If you have been trained to save people, letting them face consequences feels wrong at first. But wrong and unfamiliar are not the same thing. A useful way to understand this is through attachment theory. John Bowlby and later researchers described how early bonds shape the way we seek closeness and safety. Many empaths have an anxious attachment style. They overfunction in relationships. They try to earn stability through effort. They believe connection depends on constant reassurance, constant giving, and constant fixing. They can become addicted to repairing emotional tension because tension feels like danger. So they manage it like a job, but the cost is enormous. Over time, the body learns that love equals stress. And then comes the moment the body refuses. That is why the empath stops caring so suddenly, because it was never sustainable. And this is not a personality change, it is the end of an overcompensation. Some people will call it burnout. And yes, burnout is real. Christina Maslach, one of the leading researchers on burnout, described it as emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and reduced sense of accomplishment. But for an empath, burnout often shows up as a very specific kind of clarity. You realize you cannot keep living inside other people's emotions. You realize your empathy has been unprotected. You realize you have been generous with people who are not generous with you. You realize you have been loyal to versions of people that exist only in your hope. So what does it look like when the empath finally stops caring? It looks like fewer explanations. It looks like not rushing to respond. It looks like listening without trying to fix. It looks like saying, "That does not work for me," and letting the silence land. It looks like ending the conversation when disrespect shows up without needing to win the argument. It looks like choosing your peace even when someone calls you selfish. It looks like not defending yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. And this is why others find it terrifying. Anger, tears, and pleading is familiar. Those reactions keep the old dynamic alive, but calm boundaries change the entire system. People who rely on you to regulate them will feel abandoned. People who rely on you to soothe their guilt will suddenly feel exposed. People who rely on your empathy to escape accountability will call you cold because the mirror is finally turned towards them. Jung would describe part of this as shadow integration. The shadow is not just evil, it is everything you were taught to suppress to stay loved and safe. For many empaths, the shadow includes self-interest. It includes saying no. It includes being unimpressed by excuses. It includes walking away. It includes letting someone be upset without rushing to repair it. It includes a truth many people avoid. You can be a good person and still refuse access. When the empath stops caring, what is actually happening is that empathy becomes selective. This is not the loss of empathy. This is empathy with a gate. You still feel things, you are still sensitive, but you stop leaking your energy into every emotional demand. You stop treating every crisis as your responsibility. You stop confusing intensity with intimacy. This is the moment you learn a brutal difference. Some people do not want support. They want a manager. They want a container. They want a soft place to land after they choose chaos again. They want a person who will stay available no matter how they behave. And that is not love. That is entitlement. You might recognize the pattern. You give, they take. You explain, they deny. You forgive, they repeat. You try harder, they respect you less. Then you feel guilty for being tired. If you relate to that, I want you to hear this clearly. Feeling drained is not evidence that you are too sensitive. It is evidence that something is too much. This stage can feel like grief, not always for the other person, but for your younger self. The part of you that believed love meant enduring. The part of you that thought patience could transform someone who refused to grow. The part of you that stayed kind while being treated carelessly. The part of you that kept trying because you thought trying was the same as being worthy. When empaths stop caring, they often get accused of changing. And yes, you change. You stop negotiating your dignity. You stop being accessible to disrespect. You stop volunteering for emotional chaos. You stop sacrificing your nervous system for someone else's comfort. That change is not the problem. The problem is that some people only liked you when you were easy to use. You might wonder, how do I know if I'm becoming healthy or becoming avoidant? Healthy detachment comes with self-respect and steady behaviour. Avoidant shutdown often comes with fear, contempt, or an impulse to punish. Healthy detachment says, I see you, and I choose distance. Avoidant shutdown says, I will disappear so you feel what I felt. But the goal is not to become numb. The goal is to become clear. A calm boundary is not a punishment. It is information. One of the strongest skills you develop here is tolerating other people's disappointment. That is a major milestone. Many empaths were trained to think disappointment equals danger. If someone is upset, you must fix it. If someone feels rejected, you must explain. If someone feels uncomfortable, you must soften. But adulthood requires a different truth. People can be upset with you, and you can still be safe. People can misunderstand you, and you can still be stable. People can leave and you can still be whole. Because empathy without boundaries is self-harm dressed as virtue. Now, if you are the empath at this stage, you may notice something strange. You can spot manipulation faster. You hear the guilt in the words. You feel the pressure behind the apology. You sense when someone is trying to pull you back into your old role. And you might be tempted to argue, to prove, or to explain. But don't do it. Because the most powerful boundary is not a speech, it is consistency. People who respect you will adapt. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries will escalate. They will test you. They will create emergencies. They will accuse you. They will bring up the past. They will say, "You used to be different." They will call you selfish for doing what they have always done, which is prioritizing themselves. And this is a moment where you need a clean sentence ready. Something calm like, "I'm not available for this dynamic anymore." Notice the key word. Dynamic. Not a person. You are not attacking them. You are naming the pattern. A lot of empaths also need to accept a difficult reality. Some relationships only survive when you are overgiving. When you stop, the relationship collapses. And that collapse is not your fault. It is the proof of what it was built on. If someone can only stay close to you when you are self-abandoning, they were never close to you. They were close to the version of you that made their life easier. When you step into this stage, you start caring about different things. You stop caring about being liked by people who do not respect you. You stop caring about fixing adults who refuse to heal. You stop caring about proving your intentions to people who twist them. You stop caring about keeping peace in systems that require your silence. And you start caring about your sleep, your energy, your standards, your friendships that feel mutual, your love that feels safe, and your time that feels like it belongs to you. This is not the end of your empathy. It is the return of your agency. If you want a simple framework for this phase, use this question before you give your empathy to someone. Is this connection reciprocal? Not equal every day, not perfectly balanced, but reciprocal in spirit. Do they show care when it is inconvenient? Do they repair when they hurt you? Do they take responsibility without needing a full presentation? Do they respect your no? Do they respond to boundaries with maturity? If the answer is consistently no, then your empathy is being used as a resource, not received as love. The empath who stops caring did not lose their heart. They stopped handing it to people who treat hearts like tools. You can still be deeply compassionate and still be unreachable to disrespect. You can still understand someone's pain and still refuse their behavior. You can still love and still leave. You can still care and still choose yourself. And if you are in that stage right now, where you feel done, let it be done. Let the old role end. Let the guilt rise and fall without obeying it. Let the urge to explain pass without feeding it. Let other people feel their feelings without managing them. This is what growth looks like when you are finally on your own side. Throughout your life, you learn to ask, am I good enough? Now learn to ask the question that changes everything. Is this good for me? And if it is not, you already know what the next step is. Because when an empath finally stops caring about what drains them, they finally start caring about what saves them.